Few names are as infamous as Adolf Hitler, but long before his rise to power, he was a struggling artist, rejected from Vienna's Academy of Fine Arts. But from a young boy to his death, aged 56, his greatest fascination and lifelong passion would always be art. Later, spending huge sums of his own money to legitimately buy and commission artworks, then orchestrating the largest art theft in history. Not a chaotic free-for-all, but a highly organised operation driven by Hitler's personal obsession and then the party's ideological goals. Famously rejected from art school on 2 occasions in the autumn of 1907, just 18, travelling to Vienna, applying to the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts and taking the entrance exam, passing the initial round but ultimately being rejected by the committee, judging his drawings as unsatisfactory. On the second occasion, in 1908, not even being permitted to take the exam, being told his drawing skills particularly lacked talent in painting human figures and were not up to Academy standards, finding Hitler's portfolio focused on architecture, and being told that they were rigid and lifeless, advising him to consider a career in architecture, but would be unable to pursue a career in that field due to his lack of necessary academic qualifications, dealing a devastating blow to the young Hitler's self-esteem. In his autobiography, Mein Kampf, he describes the rejection as a bolt from the blue, being a great believer in destiny and divine providence, spending the next years of his life in quite a bohemian existence. Impoverished in Vienna, working as a day labourer on building sites and selling postcards and small watercolour paintings of Vienna landmarks, after exhausting his inheritance from his mother. As for other arts, with music, Richard Wagner was Hitler's personal favourite composer. His grand operas with themes of mythological heroism and nationalism, racial purity as the ultimate expression of the soul. Enjoying operas like Rienzi, thinking it foretold his own destiny and the glory of the German Reich, also sharing immense anti-Semitic views. Once in power, his personal taste in art became the taste of the state. He viewed himself as the supreme arbiter of culture and believed that art should serve the state and Pacific racial ideals. Promoting Arian art, the Nazis championed a style of art that was heroic, romantic, and figuratively heavily influenced by classical Greek and Roman art, even going as far as purchasing a famous version of the Disco Bowler statue, being one of his most famous prized artistic possessions, and its acquisition was a major diplomatic and political event, being a Roman marble copy of the lost Greek bronze, originally by the sculptor Myron, purchased in 1938 by the German government, with Hitler leading the negotiations. During his years in power, greatly censoring so-called degenerate art, all forms of modern and avant-garde art, including Expressionism, Cubanism, Surrealism, claiming this was a sign of moral decay, and Jewish and Bolshevik influences. To enforce this, the regime systematically removed over 16,000 artworks of so-called degenerate art from museums in Germany. In 1937, they organised the Degenerate Art Exhibition in Munich, which ran simultaneously with the Great German Exhibition, also commissioning a great number of artworks, but his commissions were not based on artistic merit alone. His personal taste became state policy, being particularly fond of sculpture and using it to express the perfect physical Arian body type. In his mind, Arno Breker was his favourite sculptor, even accompanying Hitler along with Armaments Minister Albert Speer, a former architect, to view Paris shortly after the city's surrender. Mass confiscation. Hitler personally approved a nationwide purge of German museums. Over 16,000 works was to be confiscated from state collections, often without permission. The less valuable pieces were destroyed, but the more valuable sold at auction on the open market, with the ultimate goal establishing the Fuhermuseum in his hometown of Linz, Austria, which was to be the world's largest art gallery. This ambition was the catalyst for the largest art theft in history. While the Reich marched forward and expanded its territory, the plundering was methodical. They specifically targeted the prominent and valuable art collections of Jewish families and art dealers, who had often been at the forefront of the art market. Then Alfred Rosenberg, a theorist, theologian, and convicted war criminal, with also holding several important posts in the Nazi government, was tasked with identifying, inventorying, and seizing these collections, leading to forced sales and extortion, overseen through outright theft, but also forced sales under intense pressure, and facing persecution. Many Jewish families were compelled to sell at a fraction of its value to finance their escape, or to pay exorbitant immigration fees. Direct control over the best pieces. An internal Nazi hierarchy for plunder was established. Hitler had the first choice of any seized art, followed by Hermann Göring, who built a huge private collection, Anything not wanted by them was made available for other high-ranking officials. Hitler considered himself a great architect. His grandest goal was Germania, his redesigned plan for Berlin. He wanted to demolish much of the city to rebuild it as the new capital of a global empire. The plan centered on a massive 5-kilometer long avenue of splendors with 2 monumental structures at either end. The Great Arc of Triumph, designed to be nearly 100 meters high, so enormous that the French Arc de Triomphe in Paris would comfortably fit inside the archway, and the Volkshall, or People's Hall, that would be the centrepiece, the world's largest enclosed space, topped by a dome 16 times the size of St. Peter's Basilica, intended to hold over 180,000 people and symbolise the collective power of Germania. What happened to Hitler's artwork he created? Although there is no precise, universally agreed upon number, it is believed that the artworks were in the hundreds, created from roughly 1908 to the early 1920s, small-scale watercolours and sketches, nearly of all landscapes and cityscapes. When Hitler came to power, he reportedly had many of his paintings collected and allegedly ordered some destroyed, perhaps out of embarrassment over his past failures. However, a significant number of his artworks were not destroyed, and either remained in private hands or later seized by Allied forces. US Army seizures at the end of World War II, seizing a number of artworks from Nazi official homes and storage locations. A small collection of Hitler paintings and sketchbooks were taken and are now held in the US Army Center of Military History in Washington, D.C., though they are not publicly displayed due to their controversial nature. Many of his artworks remain quietly in private hands and have appeared for sale at auctions over the years. These pieces often generate significant public controversy and are difficult to authenticate due to the existence of many forgeries, with Hitler also using a wide range of materials, making art forensics difficult. Auctions and prices. The most recent documented public sale of a painting attributed to Adolf Hitler was on the 7th of December 2021, a watercolour depicting a former monastery complex in Vienna, signed A. Hitler 11. The highest price for a single Hitler painting was $161,000 in 2014. Buyers for these artworks often come from outside of Europe, particularly from the Middle East, Russia and China. Ethical dilemmas. Major reputable auction houses like Christie's and Sotheby's have a policy of not selling Nazi-related memorabilia, which include Hitler's own artwork. The sales are often handed to smaller, less regulated auction houses, and a good chunk of his artwork has been sold privately. Thank you for watching.